On today's episode of The Back of the Bird, we sit down with Halifax Thunderbirds head coach Mike No Mercy Accursi, chat about some really fun stories from his career throughout the years, also chat about the NCAA playoffs a little bit, and catch up on some news and notes around the lacrosse world. Let's get into it. Episode 115 of The Back of the Bird.
Take your first ride and run, baby, run. If you want a sign, this is it. You're mad, your magic, you're as hot as a gun. You wanna play with fire, consider this. You'll chase the thrill if it's worth the hit, 'cause you never ever wanna work for it. Take your first ride and run, baby, run. You got a spine of steel and a roar of thunder. Yeah, you make me drown, yeah, you're pulling me under.
All right, we're back. Episode 115 of Back of the Bird. We've been a little hit and miss here. It's been a little busy time, but we're hoping to be back up and running here full time. Get these out once a week. But as always, brought to you by Cottage Springs. We've been talking about it. These springers, man, you gotta go try them out. Now I think what did I say? $9.95? $9.95 for a 4-pack of 7%ers that are built for shotgunning.
You tried them, right? You said they're pretty good?
Yeah, well, I've had the punched up springs. So
Oh.
they're the regulars. Those are the regular size cans that are 7%. And I had the boys over for a little bit of a end of the year shindig to my parents' place, and let's just say there was a few boys that fell victim to the 7%ers. But I think it was a pretty good time. So
You let your parents stay, or you kick them out?
no, they were gone. They were on vacation. But my dad, I saw him the next weekend, and he's like, "Man, how many people were here? Like, the amount of cans that were in the recycling was completely insane. It was 4 recycling bins full." So the boys did a good job. But yeah, again, these little springers, go grab those. You're going to like a concert, especially this summer, rolling over to the Budweiser stage. You walk in, maybe have a couple of those in your pockets on the walk over, and a shotgun ready to go. So yeah, give them a try at the LCBO. But yeah, buddy, let's just jump right into it. How have things been going for you?
Good. Tough one for us, 10 of the year. Same situation for both our teams. Really cool to make the playoffs. It's obviously a real kick in the nuts. It sucks. It's the worst part about this business, and the worst part is not getting to see your buddies again, or at least not again this year. So yeah, that part sucks, and everyone's got their own kind of grieving process after the year's over. But for me, it's no rest for the wicked here. Trying to get healthy and didn't play that last game, obviously. Don't really want to go into detail, but didn't play and try to get healthy and get back on the field here for PLL as soon as I can.
Yep. Well said, man. Yeah, it's tough. It's single game elimination's a crazy place to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything, I mean, kind of standard over here for me. Not a whole heck of a lot going on, just working. And yes, like you said, now it's like you kind of lose your weekend identity. Well, I guess I do. You're going to be back up and running doing it.
I said it on the interview with guest Mike Accursi, but it really is like a round of golf. Around hole 13, you're like, holy fuck, this is a lot. And then the playoffs, and then like 18th hole, you're like, this is the best sport ever,
Yeah.
And like this year and last year, the last game of the year, I played okay. When I was in there, it's like, okay, nice. Like, all right, the lacrosse is awesome. Like, this is sick.
Yeah, you're right.
And then it's over, and you're like, all right, I'm going, I want to play. Like, what are we doing this weekend? You can't wait for a bye weekend, and then now I have a couple of byes in a row. It's like, well, I'd rather just go play lacrosse with my buddies.
Yeah, no better thing in the world than just playing lacrosse with your buddies.
No,
let me tell you.
I haven't found it. If there is something better out there,
If you've got, maybe the only thing would be a 7% Cottage Springs with my buddies.
yeah.
After playing lacrosse with them,
Right.
but yeah, it's tough. It's a weird thing. Only one team can win every year. So it's and speaking of that, we've now got our final 2 teams. Albany and Buffalo going at it. So that's our buddy Paul. He's making a run. He's in 0 dark 30 mode right now. Staying off the social media, just focused on the task at hand. So we're pulling for him if we've got to pull for somebody. But yeah, it's been an interesting thing. I think a lot of maybe wins or things like that people didn't really expect. But I've enjoyed watching. I've watched I'll kind of turn it on here and there. If it was on TSN or whatever, I would turn it on. But I'm definitely not a sit down and watch the whole game if it's going to take me a lot of effort to find it somewhere, because I think it's just going to frustrate you a little bit. But yeah, outside of that, I guess, well, we've got Mike Accursi, No Mercy, Magnum, you name it, he's got that nickname. So we've got him on the podcast today for a great interview, a long sit down. Didn't even really get into the coaching part of his career.
We didn't get into a bunch of parts of his career.
Yeah, we
told some awesome stories.
Yeah, the Josh Rise kangaroo court story is man, and yeah, you'll hear them all. They're good. They're very, very good.
I knew him. He was from Oakville. They were from Oakville. I remember.
Yeah,
kind of growing up, and they were kind of around. So
yeah, he was. Yeah, he's a big man, but sounds like he got himself into some rookie trouble.
A little bit of a just a little teaser, kind of like semi-pro when he got traded for a washing machine. A much better version of that. But something kind of similar happened.
Yes. And again, I didn't know Kurz played in that era, of wooden sticks and different team names, and the first year of the NLL. It's funny. He wears his age well.
And taking the top of the helmet and making it the chin.
The chin cup. I was having a hard time even following that.
Yeah, I'll try to find a pic. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those field helmets, the one year. I'll try to find a picture of them, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess outside of that, the PLL draft just went down. I think it was kind of assumed that that order was going to be the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some crossover with some of those guys playing in the NLL too.
Yeah, we now have we drafted Pat Kavanaugh. I think he's a stud, great kid. And his brother Matt is on our team. And then we traded for Connor Kirst. And Colin Kirst is already on our team. And then we have the Islanian brothers. So we got 3 sets of brothers. And I texted my brother. I know you got brothers too, Danny. I was like, these guys are just living our dream right now. To play with your brother at the highest level would be pretty sick. And
yeah,
my brother said if they need a third goalie and his name's called, he's ready to get back in between the pipes. But pretty cool. It's I think when they had the chance to get Pat and just reunite the brothers, it was just a no-brainer. It's just gonna, I think, be a really cool thing for our team to have this year. Yeah,
no doubt, man. I think that's so cool that they get to play together. And it seems this guy's, he might be the most famous guy in lacrosse right now. He's on the Pat McAfee show.
I watched the McAfee show the other day. It was funny, man. They're like buddies. He's good on there. He does a really good job of promoting the game and promoting other people. He clearly kind of realizes the platform he has, Pat Kavanaugh, and the responsibility he has is kind of a bit of a microphone for the sport on that show. But dude, the McAfee show is funny, man. It's
great.
He does a good job at there's so much there's so much corny promotion of non core 4 professional sports, and some of the Caitlin Clark stuff has been super cringy. And he had Caitlin Clark on. It was great. He just talks to them like they're normal athletes, and same with Pat Kavanaugh. They just shoot the shit, and he talks to them like he's a normal athlete. It's great.
Yeah, I think he does an awesome job. Just again, circling back, it just sounds like people hanging out with their buddies, and it sounds like that's the best way to do it.
And it's also 3 hours long. I didn't realize that he does 3 hours a day.
Oh yeah. Crazy. But again, it's he literally just gets his show notes, and it's just him and his friends in his studio talking about the news. What a gig! That's legitimately the dream.
Yeah, and whoever does their booking for them does a great job, because they get a lot of the big stars all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of just current event stuff. It's really, they manage it well. But Outside of that, I mean, obviously, there's been a little bit of a shakeup in the lacrosse world here with Callum Robinson, and that news. I mean, just like devastating. Like I didn't know him or anything, but um, you saw all the posts and kind of talked about like the guy he was and um, the player he was and everything like that. So sending our wishes out to anyone that was that knew
Yeah.
him and the family and everything. Um, yeah, I can't imagine, but yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
if you got any.
it's a fucking absurd world we live in.
Yeah,
You know, incredibly sad. Thinking of him and his brother and their friend, all three of them, but just a crazy story. And I watched an interview with his parents on the news, and the strength of them to get up in front of the camera and be able to say anything was probably one of the strongest things you'll ever see. So thinking about his family and all of his many friends in the lacrosse world, and just a sad day for our community.
no doubt. Well said, man. I guess do we want to send it over to the Kurz dog now?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. As always, brought to you by Lucky Penny Media. At Lucky Penny Media, we're a full-service marketing company without hefty agency pricing. We understand your brand is everything to you, and when working together, it means everything to us. You're more than just a client. You're a partner and a teammate. Our philosophy is simple. You grow, I grow, we grow. So here he is, Mike Accursi.
This Pelham, Ontario native had an incredible playing career, winning 4 NLL championships with Rochester and Buffalo, as well as multiple Man Cups with Brampton and Peterborough. He is now the head coach of the Halifax Thunderbirds. Welcome to Back of the Bird, Mike Accursi.
Thanks for having me, boys.
What's going on, Kurz? How's life?
Life's good, busy. Well, a little less busy now that we're out of the playoffs, but it's busy with kids and life for sure.
No doubt.
How about you guys? How about you guys?
You know what I was thinking about this year? NLL seasons are like a round of golf, like around like hole 13, 14. It's kind of like, all right, this has been a long year, and then once it's over, you're like, fuck, what are we like? It's over.
Yeah.
Like, where'd the time go? You know, like,
You
what
do
the
a
fuck?
second 18 here or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. Like that middle, once you get just past that middle stretch, it seems like a long season. You got so much time left, and then next thing you know, you're like, okay, every week's important. It's playoff time, and trying to prep. So that's a good analogy. I like that.
How long is the honeydew list at home right now? Now that you got weekends
Oh,
back,
it's so long. Last weekend was all mulching, cutting grass, weeding gardens, getting pool
It's
stuff
it's
ready. It's
mulching
crazy.
season. Everyone knows that it's mulching season.
Yeah, it's May is mulching season. Everybody knows that, right?
So good, man.
Once now that the season's over, this is for you and Danny. Are you the guys the type that will watch the games now? I can't really ever.
No,
I watched every game.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't know. Like I love lacrosse, so you want to watch it. I got lots of, friends and guys that I respect on all the teams, so I want to see, how they make out. Matt Vince and Eric Vince are, two of my best friends. Eric's my best friend, and Matt and Eric and our families are all very close. We go on vacation together. So, I like watching them and seeing how they're doing. And, I just love the game. So as much as I can watch, I'm going to watch. Doesn't mean it
so
hurts right here. It hurts.
yeah. It doesn't take that away, but
No.
um, okay. First question we got for you: Where did No Mercy come from?
Well, it's funny because when I was in Buffalo, they called me Magnum because Magnum 44 Magnum, right? That kind of made sense.
That is
And
a
then,
sick nickname, though. If you really peel that back, that is a fun nickname.
yeah, so that was a pretty solid nickname. And then when I got traded to Rochester, I forget one game something happened, and I think I got a couple goals at the end, and Ripper was like, Mike Accursi is showing no mercy, and no mercy, Mike Accursi, and it's just kind of stuck since then. So that was all Ripper. But me, it was 44 Magnum when Magnum was
So
when I was in
Ripper took
Buffalo.
Magnum away. Ripper took Magnum away from you.
He took it a solid nickname away and gave me no mercy, which I think is still good. I'll
Yeah.
stick with it. I'm good with it.
I never got a nickname. I didn't score enough goals to have a nickname, so that's a nice.
Well, I think at the beginning, it's funny because there was a time in the NLL, like I think it was kind of Toronto that started it. Everybody had a nickname, right? It was like Popeye Doyle and Swoop, and like it was kind of, I guess, the thing to do there for a little bit. I think they, obviously we've gotten away from it. It's a little more professional now, but you introduce somebody and everybody said their name, their nickname, last name. So those days are gone, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. It's kind of like WWE style, right? Like, because I grew up going to Rock games. That was my first NLL experience, and Steve Spetol and all of them. But it is funny. Like a lot of you guys from that era kind of have stuff that carries on, and yeah, it's just funny the ones that have kind of carried on. But so I was looking through your Wikipedia. So you're born in, I think, in Pelham, which is near St. Catharines, and then eventually you get to Burlington for junior. What kind of fill in the gaps between there? Did you grow up in the St. Catharines area, and what kind of was that like?
Yeah, I grew up in Effingham, which is actually like a small kind of like hamlet of Pelham. Like I grew up in the sticks, like right in the woods, having dirt bikes and having forts in the woods, and we lived on a big farm. We had horses and all kinds of stuff. And so I actually started playing lacrosse because my older brother did. I was playing baseball at the time. He wanted to play lacrosse, so I was like, well, always want to do what your older brother does. So played in Pelham for a couple of years, and then Pelham wasn't associated with any association, even though we were 20 kilometers from St. Catharines. We weren't associated with them, so I got drafted. At that time, it was the Bay Area Bengals, which was Hamilton. And the year I got drafted, it was Bay Area, and then they moved to the Burlington Chiefs. They became the Burlington Chiefs. And so that's how I ended up in Burlington. So, it was, if nowadays Pelham and Welland and all of the local communities are all associated with St. Catharines, but back then it was St. Catharines and that was it. So once you're outside of St. Catharines, you were draftable. And, I got drafted up to Bay Area Bengals. And it's funny, my two first coaches were Mike Samet, Brian Lemon, who works for the league, and his arch nemesis, Dave Suckamore, who was the PLPA president for a long, long time. So it's funny, those guys actually worked together on the bench that year. Might have been the last time they were cordial with one another, but
I would say so.
They went on to be frenemies, I guess.
So then I imagine you demanded a trade out of Burlington, or how did that?
Well, I played a couple years in Burlington and we were just awful. Like, we got hammered every single game. Dave Suckamore made everybody use wood sticks. So, like, O guys, D guys, like, there wasn't that. We didn't have that designation back then. You played offense and defense, and everybody needed a wood stick. So you showed up, out of the trunk of his car, he pulled out a wood stick, and everybody on our team had wood sticks, which was absolutely crazy. At the time, we were mostly like an older group of kind of misfits. So we had a lot of real older guys that had kind of been like more journeymen than anybody. So we had, most of our team didn't even wear masks. Like nobody had masks on. I wore the old football cage, the running back cage. But yeah, we had to use wood sticks.
You are aging yourself on this podcast right now.
It's pretty wild when you.
I would have never guessed that you were a part of that generation, to be honest. But
yeah, so like it's funny because when I always laugh at this story. When I was playing for Burlington, we were really, really bad. Six Nations was really good at that time. I think they beat us like 21-3 or something like that. And I remember there was like everybody started like a line brawl. So everybody's like, coming in, grabbing somebody. I'm on the floor. I'm 16 years old. And I turn around and grab the first guy that's there. Well, it's Miles General. And Miles General at the time was an absolute killer in this league. No mask, it was like a Jofa bucket, and he grabs me and I kind of looks down at me. He's like, "It's not your day, little man." And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to fight." Like, please
it's not your day, little man. Coming from a guy with the last name General is a scary thing.
So obviously he didn't throw a punch. He just kind of was there, and I'm like, I just grab somebody but yeah, it was a rough couple of years in Burlington. But having said that, I did get a lot of opportunity that I probably wouldn't have gotten if I was in St. Catharines, who was also very good at that time. I ended up winning Rookie of the Year, I think, that year with Burlington, and
So
played there a couple of years.
You were losing 21-3, and you had all three, eh?
Yeah, it was pretty much that. I think
I
that
love
year, John Gray Jr. got first. I think Willie was second, and I was third in the league. So, it was definitely good because I played
not a big
absolute
deal.
ton. It was a great year for that. Like, as far as playing time for a 16-year-old coming from a small town.
Yeah.
We were the Pelham Raiders, and we played St. Catharines. They had Spartans in. They were the Golden Eagles at that time, so they weren't even the Athletics yet. They were the Athletics was the junior A team. The minor program was called the Golden Eagles. So I remember playing like Jay Luke, Steve Toole, like Grant Johnson, like all those guys when they were in their prime, in their in midget and stuff like that. And then there's these little Pelham boys kind of coming there and doing our thing. So.
Again, I would have never guessed that you were part of that generation based on the full head of hair you got going on.
Yeah, I know. It was,
it hurts.
and I can tell you, I was scared. Like, it was, wearing they're like, well, you can't wear a bird cage. Like, you're not wearing that mask. So I'm like,
You
okay,
can't wear a mask.
That's
what they said.
What are my options here? And they're like, well, put this on. So they gave me, this, running back mask. So, they screw like screws into the side of your mask because it doesn't fit your helmet. So they're way back here. You got no chin cup on. So, you take a shot, you split your chin wide open. My dad, who was a dentist, I got my chin cut open so many times that first year. He had actually carried a suture kit in his car. And before we would go home, he would come back in, he'd give me a little shot. He'd sew my chin together and, and off we go. And he's like, why don't you wear a chin cup? I'm like, Dad, they told me I couldn't wear that bucket. So that was what I had.
It's because I gotta fight General next week. I can't be wearing a chin cup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, it was wild times back then. I can't even imagine playing lacrosse. In the era of Woody's, like, I mean, again, plastic sticks were just kind of really like, I mean, there was the Brine Super Lights and what Jimmy Veltman used for his whole career, but that was pretty much it. Like, there wasn't a lot of options when it came to plastic sticks. But having said that, in midget, I used a super light. And then when I came to junior, they were like, no, you got to use a Woody. So I ended up using a Woody until my 5th year of junior. All through junior, I used a Woody. So I ended up getting a Logan, and I used a Logan until my 5th year of junior, which when I was back then was in St. Catharines. And I broke it slashing a guy, and I broke it, and I was so upset because I had it, I had it steri stripped and taped and tied, and it was my 5th year junior. I finally broke that stick, and then plastic since then, I guess.
What do you think about now when guys, some guys will get a stick strung for them an hour before the game and just take it right in? Like, how does that? It's come so far, but.
I think it's mind-boggling. Stephen Keel, played with Stephen Keel, Lomer. I think you were with Ross when we were there, and he would unstring his stick at halftime and be stringing it back up. I'm like, Keel, you just had 3 goals in the first half. What are you doing? Why are you touching your stick? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. I would get
he had to go kill a penalty in the second half, so he needed to loosen the bag up a little bit.
Oh my God, it was absolutely wild. I remember I was in Buffalo and. I was adjusting my shooting string, and JT came up to me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm just fine tuning my stick." He's like, "On game day, don't touch your stick." He's like, "If it worked in practice, it'll work here." And that kind of stuck with me a lot. And it was like, don't fix what's not broken. So after that, it was like, if it worked good in practice, worked good in shoot around, I never touched it after that. So. But I think it's crazy. These guys are like string sticks like crazy. I still can't string a stick. I still give it to somebody and be like, "Can you string the stick up for me?" And then I can tweak it. But yeah, my skill set in that is very minimal.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I have no idea how to even put a bottom string in. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, I remember those. I don't think they're really around anymore. The Warrior came out with those pockets that were like built into the stick. What were those called?
The Warps.
Yeah,
the Warps. And I was coaching Oakville in the summer, And Bergie was, sponsored by them, and he's like, "Oh, you want to try this out?" So I tried it out, and it actually threw pretty good. So I was like, "Yeah, this is all right." So he's like, "Yeah, we'll keep it." So I remember I was, shooting with it, and then after a while, it was just hitting the top, and I'm like, "How do you even adjust this? You just throw the stick out?" Like, it made no sense to me. But yeah, guys that fix their sticks and switch their pockets every practice, they come and they got a new stick. I'm like, my son's the same way. He's got like 20 sticks. Every time he's using a stick, I'm like, why? You just scored 3 goals. Why are you changing sticks? It makes no sense to me. But I guess it's a generation. They just want more. I had one stick. That was it.
Wanted to ask, so you end up getting to St. Catharines to end junior, and that was kind of like, you mentioned like Toller and those guys. That was kind of like a golden generation there from the late '90s into like, I think 04, 05 when Steinhaus and Kahn won championships, I think, in St. Catharines, if my timing is right. What do you think was kind of like, what do you think was kind of the key to having a 4 or 5 year stretch where there's a lot of good players coming out of that area?
I think it was the minor system was really good. I know those St. Catharines Golden Eagles teams were always really, really good. And we had 2 minor associations in St. Catharines for the longest time. We had Spartan, which was kind of like one side of St. Catharines. Golden Eagles was the north side of St. Catharines. And then you had Pelham, which was mostly like Welland and Pelham kids would play in Pelham. But I think those minor systems were so good and so strong. They were always in A. Pelham, we used to win either B or C. St. Catharines Golden Eagles would always win A. So there was 3 really good minor systems at that time that were, eventually feeding all of those junior programs. And, they would pull the Kilgores over from, over the river. And, so they had access to a lot of players that I think made that group really, really good. And then obviously, I think at that time, Jay Luke was, dominating junior. I think he was like 100 points. Toller was, picking passes off, doing Toller stuff. But we had guys like Mike Perna, who, just kind of an all-around good face-off guy, would beat guys up. And then we had young guys like Tom Hayak, Andy Turner, coming up as midget players playing for us when we were in our year 5. That were just outstanding midget players. Again, just a great minor system, long history in St. Catharines. So, obviously that helps when you have a good minor system like that.
I had no idea they were even called the Golden Eagles. When did that change?
I don't really know when they went full athletics. Yeah, the junior A's were always the athletics, but everything underneath that was the St. Catharines Golden Eagles. And then there was the St. Catharines Spartans, which had like they were red and white and had the candy stripes down the arms. And but I don't know when they actually merged all of them together and made the minor system the athletics. But yeah, the Golden Eagles, that was back in the day for sure.
Was there ever a significant push? I think there's been some senior A teams out there, but was there ever a real push, especially right after that successful run, to just get a St. Catharines senior A team, or for all you guys that played there?
They actually had the Niagara Falls Gamblers. I don't know if that was before
the Gamblers.
Donville, you might have just been born, maybe. Probably not even on. Lomer, you might have been in preschool.
Did you say the Gamblers? Is that the
Niagara Falls?
That's
Gamblers.
all time.
Right?
That's amazing.
Niagara Falls Gamblers. So Niagara Falls Gamblers, that was my last year of junior. So we kind of expected that we would go into the draft, but they started this Niagara Falls Gamblers. And so there was all those junior guys that moved up, went to St. Catharines. We ended up getting for local, you could, say how many local guys there were. So like Darius Kilgore came back and played, Richie Kilgore, Derek Graham. I'm trying to think of Paul Day was on my team at that time. He was one of my line mates. Jay Luke, Steve Toole, Bob Watson. We ended up trading for Bob Watson. So that was when Bob was kind of a backup, for Bill Gary up in Brampton. So we traded for him. So he became our starting goalie. And then Ryan Kells, I think, was our backup. But we had it was like a total group of misfits. We had a really good young core that kind of came out of junior that were like ready to go. And then we had kind of some guys that came back to play locally. and then we filled the rest with kind of like I don't even know. I think that was the only year they played, and then they retired. But that year we ended up beating Brampton in 7 games to go to the Mann Cup. And we went out and played Victoria, who had both the Gates, Tom Marichuk, Marty O'Neill was in net. Like they were a dominating team. We won the second game, and then we got banged off. But it's funny when nobody kind of expected us to do anything because Six Nations was good. Brampton was in the era where they were always really really good. Peterborough was kind of hit or miss. They had a few really good guys, but not a lot. And then here comes this Gamblers, and we ended up winning.
Gamblers, here come the Gamblers. Watch
Here
out
come
for
the
those
Gamblers. It was awesome. Like, I mean, we played out of the Niagara Falls Memorial Arena, and it was fantastic. And it was pretty funny. But yeah, Paul Day was my line mate with Darius Kilgore. Terry Sanderson was the head coach. So,
Man, there's like 4 or 5 coaches in the history of lacrosse that are just like, oh yeah, and it was this. It's like, of course, Terry Sanderson was the head coach of the Niagara Falls Gamblers.
Of the Gamblers.
So you guys went.
Yeah,
You guys went 1 year, went to the Mann Cup, and then folded.
no, we actually went to the Buffalo. So,
Okay.
so Smoke and Joe bought the team, and because Niagara Falls, he wanted to bring it to Buffalo because he saw the success of the Bandits. So we actually played out of it was
Smoke and Joe bought the Gamblers. Like that is my favorite line I've heard on this podcast so far.
So we played out of the Marie Midland Arena at the time. I don't know what it's called now, but Marie Midland Arena. So we would go there. We had this massive arena, and there was like 50 people in it. Like it was blue shirt night every night. Like there was nobody in the stands, and we had this massive, massive arena, and nobody came. So that was that year. Again, we lost to Brooklyn, I think, in 7. But we had everybody. Like we had Paul Gate, we had Brian Shanahan came out of retirement and played for the team for a little while. I mean, we had everybody and just couldn't put it together. Bob Watson actually that year, that was when he hurt his eye. So we were in Brooklyn at the time, and I remember Kenny Millen took a shot, went right past my ear and hit Bobby, and Bobby had his old mask and it had rusted right here. So when the ball hit, it went right through his mask. And Whipper was done. We probably would have won that series if Whipper was there, but Whipper was done. Ryan Kells was our backup, and then Brooklyn ended up beating us in 7, and they went on to win the Mann Cup that year. And then we were done that year, and then everybody dispersed. And St. Catharines Athletics, I think a few years after that, started a senior program, but we had all kind of left and kind of had our situations all taken care of. So they had a really good team. I think Cosmo, Vino, like a lot of guys came through there. But financially they just couldn't keep it together long enough to really, put roots in the community. And I think it would do well now. I think a senior team would do well, but I would encourage no one to put a team in senior right now. I think it's kind of the haves or the haves not league. And, I think it's kind of lost. To me, it's kind of lost its way in a certain extent because it's like you just buy Mann Cups, and that really wasn't, it's not the intent of that. So I think if you went back to local teams, I think you would see a much more competitive league. I think you got to maybe even say to some of the older guys, like, hey, just, don't play anymore. Let the young guys have a good development league, give the older guys some time off in the summer because it's tough on your bodies, especially when you're playing in the heat. You're playing 7-game series towards the end. You go to the Mann Cup. By the time that's done, it's middle of September. Training camp started end of October. Guys are still banged up, feeling the summer. So I'd like it to see it go that way, but likely it will never happen.
The dollar talks, I think, is the biggest thing.
100%. Well, you look at Six Nations lineup this year. Like it is absolutely ridiculous. Like you could put that in an NLL team, and they may win the cup if you put that Six Nations team in the NLL. Like it's wild. It's absolutely wild. And then you got teams like Owen Sound. I don't know who they're gonna have playing up there. You got Coburg. They draft all their young guys.
Don't sleep on the Purple Bears this year. Let me tell you.
Hey, they got a good young team. I'm not saying anything about the Purple Bears, but how do they financially
No, you can't.
survive against that? Like, how do you compete against that when you're going into Six Nations and they have an all-star team? Like you
No.
can't. So what's your option? You're playing just to play, to stay in shape, hone your skills. Like, so it's great for young guys, but if you're a veteran guy on that team, it sucks because you're kind of playing for nothing. Like, you don't have a hope. You hope that you
Yeah.
play good enough that you get traded to a better team that you can actually have a chance. But this year with Peterborough not bringing everybody back, and again, I think it's a one-horse race. Might as well just put Six Nations, start playing the Mann Cup. Everybody else play for second.
There's going to be a lot of grumpy Peterborough guys hearing that. I love it, though. I live for it.
Hey, for a lot of years, they exposed that too, right? They had
Yeah.
lots of money. They
Yeah,
were
that's
spending
fair.
lots of money. And I'm not saying they bought Mann Cups. They had a lot of local guys, a lot of really good, talented local guys. But they would always bring in the Mark Matthews and Matt Vince's. Like, they brought in enough guys to win every year.
No doubt. So, going to the NLL, you played in the first year of the NLL. Like, again, I'm not believing any of this stuff. It's wild to me. But
so I was like thinking today, I'm like, oh, what are they going to ask me? Stuff like that. So, when I was thinking about my first game, so it was the Ontario
you
Raiders.
said they're going to ask me about the Golden Eagles, the Gamblers, and the
Eagles.
first year in the league.
First year. So the Ontario Raiders. So again, weird. Like, now you would have a dispersal draft and you would get all these players. So back then, Johnny Meridian, Les Bartley, the two kind of heads, they said, we're going to designate locally, 6 guys that are going to be our property, no matter where they play. League said, sure, why not? So it was Bob Watson. It was myself, Kenny Millen, Sean Williams, Colin Popeye Doyle, and I can't think of, not Dean Ciccone. It was Dean something. I can't remember his last name. But those were the 6 guys. So that was the start of the team. And then all of a sudden we had Chris Gill, Dan Stroop, Andy Ogilvie, all these guys that came from out west, which, they were, at the time, Andy Ogilvie was a scary, scary man. He grunted every time he cross-checked. And I swear to God, he would run by and he'd be grunting and everybody was scared. Like, it was just absolutely wild. But
Ogie Oglethorpe.
Yeah, Ogie Oglethorpe. I remember my first game. It was at Cops Coliseum, and we played the Rochester Nighthawks. So I went into the locker room, super excited. Obviously, first pro game. This is going to be awesome. My number at the time was 44. And I go look at my jersey.
You're still Magnum at this point, or no? You're not Magnum yet.
Well, funny story. So I go and look at my jersey, and it was all sublimated. So we only had one set of jerseys back then. Nobody had 2 sets of jerseys, sublimated, and it was 94. And I was like, this is wrong. Like, so I went up to Johnny Meridian and I said, Johnny, like, I put 44 down as my number and nobody else wanted it. I was 44. He's like, oh, I made a mistake. Too bad. That's your jersey for the year. We're not making any new ones. So that first year I was 94. That was my number. And so I was like, this is a great start to my pro career, right? I'm not my number, telling everybody, oh, I'm number 44. And then, ended up being 94. Second shift, I go down, I score on Chugger, Steve Dietrich. So I'm super excited. I'm like, one of my teammates, Chris Gill, went in to go get the ball. Chugger picked up the ball in his stick and whipped it into the crowd. So I don't even have my first, game ball. Chugger whipped it in the crowd. I still remind him of that all the time. I'm like, yeah, well, I have lots of balls on my shelf, but I don't have my first goal because you whipped it into the stands. So
somebody's got that at home. Someone listening has that ball in their hand right when they're listening to this.
Yeah, and even worse, a bunch of goalies are going to start doing that now.
Yeah, exactly.
You just gave a bunch of guys ideas.
See you later. Yeah,
gone.
So first year of the NLL, because that year they were trying to start, because it was the MILL, I guess. So Troy Cordingley actually signed with that league. I got a big signing bonus to sign with the league. So they were going to have these competing leagues. And then all the guys were like, no, we're going to go sign, because the guys that owned MILL had all the property rights to all the teams, team names, all this stuff. And so Troy had signed with the league, not with a team. Said, "Yeah, I'll go play for your league." And he ended up getting some money from them. But again, I think he ended up signing in Buffalo. But yeah, it was wild times back then. Wild times.
So how,
$75 if you didn't dress, $300 if you dressed. So practice, and you only dress
Jesus,
15
you guys were
guys.
overpaid based on what I've been getting paid. Holy
Oh
smokes!
yeah. Well, we only had 12 game seasons, so it's not like you're making like $3,500 for the year. Like, let's be honest. Um, but yeah, if you so practices were absolutely insane because everybody wanted to be in the lineup. So practices were it was like training camp every single practice. Everybody's going balls out. Everybody wanted to press the coaches because they wanted to get in the lineup. They didn't want the $75. They wanted the $300 instead. So practices were intense back then.
what was it like
Gone.
playing for Les Bartley? I was doing something a bit ago, looking at kind of like his coaching tree, and pretty much everyone in the league that coaches now played for him. What was that experience like?
It was pretty wild. I mean, he obviously had coached it professional for a couple of years, so he had a different demeanor than what I was used to in junior. I had Jim Brady. I don't know if you guys know that name, but I had Jim Brady. Jim Brady was he was, really short man. He knew lacrosse, but he was more of like a motivator, not an X's and O's guy. But he would dress according to the team that we were playing. So if we played Brampton, he would show up in all burgundy, yellow. He wore like a suit or something like fancy. It was just wild. So that you put it in perspective, that was my junior coach, right?
Yeah.
I had Dave Suckerman and Brian Lemon, who were absolute animals, yelled and screamed. Then I went to Jim Brady, who was like the exact opposite. He was a good motivator, but not really an X and O guys. And then you go to, Terry Sanderson, who was hard nosed, old school kind of coach, which I love Terry. I mean, Terry was one of my favorite guys to ever play for. I think he got the most out of me and really, I think, got my game to the next level. And then you went to Bart's, and he was a great motivator. He was a great man, and everybody had his respect, and everybody played hard for him. And he didn't need to yell or scream, but he was good. I remember before our first game, he shut the lights off, and they were big on like meditation, and Johnny was into like sports therapy, which was really at the time nobody really used it. We thought
Yeah,
this is
that's ahead
hilarious.
of the time. I feel like.
Yeah, this is hilarious. So we're all sitting in a dark room and we're thinking about ourselves, and he's got this whole speech and he's going through it, and it was great. We were all pumped up. But yeah, to think about it now, I mean, a lot of guys use sports psychologists, and we were kind of sitting in the dark, thinking about our game. So they were definitely ahead of their time, and he definitely was, and he was a great coach, great experience for sure.
And then like that was kind of the nucleus of guys that went to Toronto, but you didn't end up playing for the Rock, right? Didn't you? You went to either Buffalo or Rochester after that. How did that
No,
transition kind of
so
occur?
so I actually went to
Or you went to
Syracuse.
Syracuse, right?
Syracuse smashed. Great jerseys. Paul Gage
Again,
with his
again,
hat
you,
on
the
backwards.
way that you're
Hilarious
aging yourself in this is my favorite. It's my favorite thing in the world.
thing.
When they start doing the
Um,
retro jerseys for the teams that you played for, that's got to be tough.
Yeah.
yeah,
You're
that's
you're
it's
you're
tough.
playing against Albany and they're doing their throwbacks against you.
Yeah.
Tough pill to swallow. But yeah, so anyway, Johnny Meridian, get back to the story. Johnny Meridian gave me a call. So your first year, you made $300 a game. Second year, you made $500 a game. So at that time, there was myself, Colin Doyle, Willie, um, trying to think of Chris Gill, Dan Stroop. So we all kind of talked before, and we're like, let's try and make 550 a game. So let's just ask for $50 more, just because we all ended up in like top 15 in scoring. Like we had a really, we were good, we were young. We thought, let's just ask for, what's the worst they can say no? So he said, okay. I was the PLP rep for the Ontario Raiders. So he called me first, and he said to me, well, we're going to offer you $500. And I said, okay, well, John, a few of us were thinking that, we would want, 550, to play. And he's like, no, that's not happening. It's $500. And I was like, well,
And
like
how many games in a season at this point?
12. There was 12.
So
And
that's an awesome amount of money to be arguing about back and forth.
yeah, like so it's insignificant, right? We kind of figured it was insignificant, we thought, but just for the sake of, we had a really good year. Let's, maybe make more than the league minimum at that time, like a veteran minimum. And so they said, he goes, no, $500. And I said, well, talking to Doyley and Willie and, these guys, and we all kind of want 550. And he's like, oh, really? He's like, you guys all want 550, eh? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, it's $500. Take it or leave it. He's like, I'll call you back tomorrow. So I said, okay. He's like, you talk to those guys too. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And so I call the guys, and they're there. He's like, Johnny was not happy. He said $500, take it or leave it. We're like, well, if we all stick together, I think we'll kind of get it. So I was like, okay. So Johnny Remini called me back the next night, and he goes, so what's the verdict? I'm like, we want 550. We think it's not a lot of money. It's just, more just to say like how good a year we had. He's like, okay, perfect. You've been traded to Syracuse Smash. And
Gone. Out of town. Out of town.
Traded, the deal was already done. Traded me to Syracuse. So I called those guys. I say, hey, just letting you know I got signed for Syracuse. They all signed for $500 a game. Needless to say, they went off to Toronto. I went to Syracuse for a year. So even funnier story was because I was a union rep and they didn't negotiate in fair practice. I filed a unfair labor practice suit against the Ontario Raiders, and I ended up getting like $3,500. I had to eat it in Syracuse for a year, which was awful because we were terrible and the organization wasn't very good. And then at the end of the year, they stiffed me for my gas money. So the league stepped in and said they didn't.
Sounds like you played for Coburg.
Yeah, you didn't pay his $450 in gas money, so now you have to trade him. So they traded me to Buffalo, and then that's kind of Buffalo and Rochester were my next.
And then Magnum was born.
And Magnum was born. Yeah. 1999, I think that was my first year in Buffalo.
That's awesome. You got more money than you would have even gotten if they just given the extra $50.
100%. 100%. So, yeah, it was pretty wild.
That is crazy. What was that first year in Buffalo like? Was it the crowds? Like, was everything kind of the way it is now, or?
No, not even close. Like it was, they maybe got 6,000. It wasn't very good, and then it was like that for a couple of years. And again, I don't know why, but I think at that time there was kind of a downturn in the economy in Buffalo. All the steel mills had kind of shut down, so there wasn't a lot of money. So I think there was like a reorganizing of where people were going to make their money in Buffalo. And I think the Sabres were really good at that time, so people were going to Sabres games. The Bills, obviously, in that generation, that was in the heyday of the Bills with Jim Kelly and all of that. So people were spending their money elsewhere, and Bandits tickets were kind of not really a priority. So I mean, we did okay, I think, at that time in the league. It wasn't, but it was nothing like Toronto. I mean, you go to Maple Leaf Gardens and they were selling out. Philadelphia at that time still had amazing crowds. But we weren't very high as far as, attendance wise. It was only when I came back in 2008 that I kind of turned around, and that's when the crowds were kind of coming back.
They heard Magnum was back in town, eh? And they're ready to go.
Back in town, where you win the championship,
Love it.
Skipping ahead a little bit, you played on the 07 Nighthawks team. You guys ended up winning 14-2. If you look back at it, arguably, one of the best NLL teams ever. What was it like being on that team? And then also, I want to kind of ask you about like the best players you've ever seen or been around, and was that peak John Grant? You think that was kind of the best player that you ever kind of saw during your playing career?
2017 was definitely one of the best kind of groups for sure. Again, I think there was a lot of balance there. And obviously, Junior was at that time, he was peak. No real injuries to say. He was scoring at will, but he had like a prime, Sean Williams. You had a prime, Scott Evans. You had I think Shawnee Evans that year, we drafted Shawnee. Shawnee actually started out the D door. He played defense, not very good defense, but he played out the back door that year because there was no room up front. So he was playing out the back door, kind of transitioning up, and obviously staying and playing whenever he wanted or decided that he wanted to. But it was a real tight group. The locker room, if you could recreate that locker room on every team, I think you would have success just because we were so tight knit. The travel that year was horrendous. So we had so many things that kind of happened that year that made us even tighter as a group. And we just had a belief that no matter what the score of the game was, we'd be down 3 goals with 4 minutes left. And we're on the bench. We're winning this game. Like we didn't have a doubt that we were going to win that game. Patty O'Toole was lights out that year. So we just had a belief in ourselves that we were going to win every single game. And I remember we didn't start that season very good. I think we were like 2-3, or no, we might have been 2-2, or I don't know if we were 2-3. And then I think we won like 16 or 17 in a row, if I'm correct. And we lost in Minnesota. And I remember we were so pissed off that we lost, and we had this big team meeting, and we're like, guys, you look at the talent in this room, we have to come together. And obviously that time it was more of a beer league. Everybody got, a couple of drink tickets for afterwards. But we went out that night. Everybody, had a great time and got after it. And then I think after that, we just decided, we need to start taking over. And then we started winning games. We started believing in ourselves more and more. And then we just had that belief every single game we were going to win. And, we ended up winning it all that year. In Arizona, of all things, because the Circus was in town in Rochester, so we couldn't have a championship in Rochester, which is even crazier when you think about it. Circus is in town. Sorry, guys, you got to go play in the Visitors Arena. So we went to Arizona and won in Arizona. So
yeah, just filling in the gaps there. So you're 2-2. You lost at Minnesota. Then you finished 14-2. So you won your last 12 games, then 3 playoff games. And just reading the scores after the game you lost, the goals for was 19, 22, 13, 18, 19, 14, 15, 21, 12, 19, 14, 14. So
21 banger in there. Magnum had a couple, eh? Magnum had a couple.
A 22 banger too. Sure. A 22 and a 21 and 3 19s. So just obviously one of the best offenses ever.
Yeah, I mean that offense just we could get it done whenever we kind of wanted to. It was kind of like we had to turn it on at times, but again, John Grant Jr. was lights out that year. Like he was in his prime, and he was amazing. I mean, as far as stick skills wise, there's never been a better player than, in my opinion, than John Grant Jr. Like he could score behind the back from the shooter spot around the world. Like he was doing things that nobody was even thinking about doing with his stick. But best overall player I ever played with I'd have to go with JT. Just more of a complete player in the sense that he would do things off ball. Junior really wasn't an off ball guy. He created with the ball, whether it was making great passes or scoring goals. But JT would work off ball. He would go back. He would play real hard, tough defense. Like he was just one of those guys that could put a whole game together. Be anywhere on the field and be one of the best guys. Like he would go back and play defense, and he was a really good defender too. So, but he was just so smart, very cerebral in his approach to the game, and scored those big goals consistently year in and year out. And health wise, the guy was never hurt. He rarely missed games. He played every game. It didn't matter the score. He was given it every single game. So I would say he was the most complete player. Best offensive player, there's no doubt, hands down. Junior was the man.
Who's your favorite teammate of all time then?
Favorite teammate? Chris
or if you coached a guy that you really liked, maybe?
Lomer, you were great.
My guy. There's my guy.
Hey, Lomer, were you with the team with Josh Rise? Were you there when
No,
Josh?
That was just before.
Oh, one of the funniest stories. I got to take a few minutes to tell the story about this.
Yeah.
So
No
Josh
problem.
Rise, we drafted Josh Rise, and at the time he was a big boy, and he could fight and do all this stuff. And we had a preseason game. He went out and he got into a fight, And I remember Chris Schiller, who was, again, one of my favorite teammates ever because he was just hilarious. But he was beside me on the bench, and, Rise comes off and he goes, hey, how was that, guys? How'd I do? We're like, you did okay, but if I were you, I'd go grab him again. Like, show really what you got. So he's like, okay. So he went back out, fought him again. And I don't think he did so well the second time, but we came to the bench. I'm like, yeah, I think that was good. You did a good job. So he was super pumped. First game of the year, he got in the lineup. So he was super pumped. He was excited. We went around afterwards. He was all jacked up because he scored a goal. And Jordan Hall we were sitting in the bar in Rochester, and he went up to chest
That is
bump.
such true. Halsey's there too. Like, that is an all-time beauty team.
Yeah. So Halsey's sitting there, and I'm sitting beside Halsey. We're having drinks, and obviously the dance floor it's late in the night. Rise has had way too much to drink, and the dance floor was all wet. So he came up to chest bump Jordan Hall, and Jordan Hall just kind of went whoop, and just kind of went was like, "What are you doing?" He went falling down, tore his MCL. He was done for the year. Yeah, tore his MCL, done for the year. So Riser was like an absolute beauty. So we would have all these email chains, and we said, "Hey guys, we're going to do Super Bowl squares." So who wants to do the squares for the Super Bowl? So he gets on the email and says, "Hey guys, my girlfriend really makes a really good chocolate macadamia square. Do you want me to bring that to practice, or should I bring it to the game?" He didn't. So he did. So we said, so Chris Schiller and I obviously got on the email chain, and we're like, okay, you are absolutely banned from sending any emails, you idiot. We meant Super Bowl squares. So that was the start of
the mean macadamia, and that's an all-timer.
Yeah. So that was the start of the Josh Rise year. So Josh, he put his foot in his mouth every single year. Like, he did some absolute crazy stuff. We used to do the shoe check all the time. Shawnee Evans and Scott would be like crawling under the thing and put ketchup on your shoe or whatever. So anyways, we're at the restaurant having our lunch. Shawnee crawls underneath, puts a little bit of ketchup on Josh's shoes. So we all shoe check. Josh comes, looks, he's like, "Oh, that's not really funny, guys." Like, and he was kind of all bitter at this point. And so he takes a ketchup bottle and puts some on Shawnee's shoe. So Shawnee freaks out, takes the ketchup, puts ketchup all over him. This is inside the restaurant. Puts ketchup all over him. Like, there was like almost a fight in the restaurant. We're like, "Okay, guys, like, that's enough. No more." So all these things kept happening throughout the year. It was just, part of that locker room was just that. Those were the things that were happening that would just make us so tight. We just had so much fun and always doing stupid stuff like this. Well, at the end of the year, Chris Schiller and I decided that, we had a kangaroo court where, like, kangaroo court does not do Josh Rise justice. So we're going to actually have a courtroom. So we had a shoot around. Chris Schiller and I left early, and we set up the locker room like a courthouse. So we had all the chairs lined up in the middle like a courthouse. We had 2 desks at the front. We kind of told the guys before we were going to do this. We had 2 desks at the front. Troy Bonterre, who was a security guard at the nuclear power plant at the time, so he left. He put his security guard outfit on. And so he was the bailiff, so he had the security guard outfit on. And Pat McCready was a cop, so he obviously represented Josh Rise because he was he was his lawyer, and we were the prosecutors, Chris Schiller and I. So guys come in, they come into the room, court, it's set up like courthouse, so everybody's like laughing. Troy Bonterre's patting everybody down, doing all this stuff. Before Josh went to trial, he went up to the front thing. He had a Bible. He had to put his hand on the Bible, say that he's tell the truth, all nothing but the truth. And we went through this whole court, and Chris Schiller and I had documented everything. We had put everything down. So we went through the whole kind of deal. Pat McCready ended up, pleading insanity and wanted a plea bargain for him. And like, it was one of the funniest things. Like, you talk to like Jordan Hall, Willie, all those guys. It was one of the funniest moments. Ken Millen was there. Like, it was just an absolute riot. But that's what made that team so great. We were so tight. We did so much stuff like that just made us tighter as a group. And I think our performance on the floor represented what was in the locker room. So So it's a funny
Where
story, but part of it.
That's
Where-
amazing.
where did Kangaroo Court come from? Like in the NLL, was it from the jump? Like when you were in Ontario, was it already part of the kind of culture, or did some person or
I think
league or
that
team kind of bring it in?
I think Rochester was the first team that really started that kind of kangaroo court. And I think it was Chris Schiller who was kind of like, well, that was a fine. That was a fine. And, he was always getting ribbed on because he was one of a couple of Americans that were on the team. So, he'd be like, oh, no borders here, boys. And I think on the end that year, we ended up getting a sticker that said no borders in the Canadian American flag on the back of our helmets. So that I think Chris Schiller was kind of the guy who started the kangaroo court, and it was like really small. It was like $1, $2 fines. We have kangaroo court now in Halifax, and the guys are getting done like $20-$40 a week in kangaroo court fines. But last year they had enough money. Whoever was available, they flew to Florida, stayed at one of Kurt's houses down in Florida, and they had enough for a couple rounds of golf. They partied for a couple days and then flew home. So. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool.
If you can't make it, thanks for the money, boys. Appreciate it. But
Yeah, in Rochester that year, we actually had enough money that we rented a limo bus, and we had a bar that closed off the downstairs, and we had free drinks. We paid for all of our drinks and our transportation to and from the bar back to our hotels at the end of the night.
it's not bad at all.
Yeah, it was good times.
Well, we've had you for a while, Donnie. Do we want to? Well, I mean, you obviously went back to Buffalo, and then we're back to Roch again after that. Is that?
Yeah.
Am I right
and
on that?
yeah, 2007. So that was my last year in Roch.
The end of the Gamblers. No, yeah, go ahead.
I was a free agent. I was a free agent that year, and I remember I had a phone call, and I just had twins. I didn't even have the twins yet. I think the twins were. Oh no, I did have the twins. Twins were born in July, so I had my twin girls, and I remember, they called me and they were like, "Well, they offered me. I can't even remember at that time. It was an okay number, but not like the number that I wanted." And he's like, "Well, you're having twins, so like you're not really going anywhere." And I was like, "Whoa. Like, let's stop the conversation right now. Like, that's not the way that you negotiate. Like, just because I had twins, my wife's always been super supportive of me. So I'm like, I will leave, if I get a better offer." And this was before unrestricted free agency season opened. So then they were like, "Well, if you don't sign for this, we're going to trade you." And I was like, "Well, then trade me. I really don't care." And at that time, Paul Day was the GM of Edmonton. So I ran into Paul at the rink, and he was like, "Yeah, they offered me for a trade. Like, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Like, Edmonton's a far away." And he's like, "Well, what about an RV?" And I said, "What?" And he's like, "Our owner owns the largest trailer in Canada, like the trailer lot, which was Bruce Urban." And so I said, "Well, I'd be interested in that. Like, if that kind of worked." So I ended up getting a 26-foot trailer.
Sorry to stop you. I love this league so much.
Yeah.
Like,
wild times.
Like, it's amazing.
The story actually gets better. So I ended up getting traded to Edmonton. I met Paul Day at I don't know why my camera keeps going. I met him at Starbucks, and he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, what do you want?" So I said what I wanted. He's like, "Okay." He's like, "We talked about a trailer. I'll give you a 26-foot trailer." He's willing to do like a side contract for his RV company. You'd have to go there and do some advertisements. Some flights for my wife and kids out to Edmonton. Some stays out there. And I wanted laser eye surgery, so I got the laser eye surgery.
No, you didn't. You didn't loop laser eye into your contract.
I did.
You were ahead of the times.
So I signed the contract. 2 weeks later, this guy calls me and says, "Hey, are you Mike Accursi?" I said, "Yep." He's like, "I've got your trailer. Where do you want me to put it?" And I'm like, "Well, you can, where are you?" He's like, "Well, I'm just coming into St. Catharines." They transported it from Edmonton, drove it from Edmonton, and parked it in my driveway. And
then it was yours?
26.
Or was it like a lease?
It was mine. No. It was mine. They gave me the ownership, and
you got LASIK eye surgery out of this? Like, this is the
Yeah.
most hysterical contract I've ever heard.
Yeah. So then the league shut down that year. So there was like they were obviously in negotiations. They shut the league down. So the owner called me and said, "Hey, I need to get that trailer back." And I said, "Well, my contract is actually with All Star RV. It has nothing to do with the Edmonton Rush. Let me know when you want me to go out and
And
advertise
this
my
is the
thing."
second time you absolutely got him. I mean,
And he said,
you almost bankrupted the Ontario Raiders, and then
yeah, for the $50 extra a game.
Yeah.
So then he goes, "Well, we'll just come pick it up." I'm like, "Well, you got to find it first." And so I had moved it out to my mom's farm. And like a few weeks later,
I
the
thought
league
you were going to
settled.
tell me Billy D came into the story at that point or something.
No. And so the league signed back. I went and played in Edmonton for half a season. We're not very good. We had a lot of guys, but then Paul Day got fired. And so him, Jim Milligan, everybody got cleaned out. They brought in Bob Hamley, met with Bob Hamley. Bob's like, "How do you like it here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like it." Played 2 games with Bob. I remember we had a game. There was an all-star game. So we played the Friday night against, I think it was Rochester. The Saturday we had the all-star game in Edmonton. I had the all-star game. I flew home. I was coming home from work on Tuesday. I got a phone call from Darius Kilgore. Says, "Oh, we traded for you and back to Buffalo." So this was 2008. Went back to Buffalo and then won again that year. So I won those 2 years in a row, 2007, 2008. So, and it's kept the RV.
Got the RV.
So that was the best contract of all time because you played.
Did you get LASIK? Did that work? Did they do the eye surgery?
I did end up getting the LASIK because obviously they didn't want to do it during the season because it was a 2-year deal. So they wanted me to do it at the end of that year. And I was like, okay, but they obviously traded me. And then when I went to Buffalo, they're like, "Well, that has nothing to do with us. So we're not paying for your LASIK." So I was like, well, whatever. I got a trailer for the deer. I think it was about,
yeah, I think you made off right.
I think it was about 20 grand. I don't even know how many games I played there. 8 games, 9 games, something like that. But yeah, it worked out. Worked out for me. Good times back in the day. Those days are long gone.
Hearing this gone. What was part of your contract? An RV, LASIK eye surgery.
Couple flights. We actually the Julie and my 2 girls, Abby and Izzy and Carter. Carter was born in 2004, so she was like 3. So my wife flew out with my twin girls and my son out to Edmonton. We stayed at West Edmonton Mall. We stayed in like a cowboy room, I think, for a couple nights, and then my son really wanted to stay in the construction car because they have like literally cars with beds in it. So we switched rooms and we went to the car bed, for a couple days. Yeah, so it was good. It was a good time. I mean, I nothing but fond memories of Edmonton. That's for sure.
That's awesome. I'm just imagining like going through like the PLPA website now, and you're just reading through guys' contracts. It's like number 1, like salary. Number 2, couple flights. Number 3, an RV.
Yeah, it's wild.
Number 4, LASIK.
Yeah.
That part is my favorite.
I mean, hey, guys have lots of stuff in there, but
there was
awesome.
a couple guys. I think there was 3 guys that got trailers. It was me, Dan Stroop, Chris Gill. Stroop got traded and Gill got traded the same day to Colorado. So they went to Colorado, and then I went to Buffalo. So and we all got to keep the trailers. So good times.
Do you still have your trailer, or what happened to it?
I don't have it anymore. No, but I kept it for. I think I sold it to my sister maybe a couple of years ago. She wanted it, and I wasn't using it. So
I bet you buried her on that price too, eh?
Buried it. Made out like a bandit.
You were given a free trailer and charged her double.
Yeah, 100%. It's the way it rolls.
Well, I was going to, we've taken up a lot of your time here. We usually ask about numbers, about best player you've ever played with, and about gear, but we've kind of all covered. We kind of covered all the bases there with the sticks and the helmets
Gear.
and everything. So, well, we've been asking guys.
The gear. I got a funny story about gear. If you guys want time.
Actually, I got one question. You tell your funny story, and then I do have one question about the gear after that.
Okay. Well, it's a gear related story. So, I used the same set of shoulder pads and kidney pads since I want to say it was 2000 and no, it was 2000. Marty O'Neill just started Max Lax.
Yeah.
And I still have the pads. My son yanked them out because I kept them. I wanted to put them in a case because I worn them for, basically, in my 17 years, I think it was like 15 years. They're sewed together multiple times, but I still got the Max Lax gear. And I remember he gave them to me, and I was like, one piece. They had like the arm pads were built into it. I ended up cutting the arm pads off. I used those for a couple of years, but the shoulder pads, kidney pads, they're all like in one little piece. I would throw my gear on, like I could have my jersey on, just be like a goalie and just kind of put my arms through. But yeah, I used them my whole career, and I still think they're solid gear. Not much padding, but they were solid for me, anyways. So,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Gear now has changed so much.
Well, the question we've been asking is how old are your kidney pads? So that you answered actually the question. But one other gear related question: what was it like that one year when you guys had to wear the field helmets in the NLL?
Oh, they had the orange right here, right? Those ones. Yeah, they were awful. So we ended up doing, a few guys kept them, and you had to wear a 4-pointer. So everybody kind of adjusted the 4-pointer so it wasn't sitting on your chin. And I remember the first few games, you had that big plastic piece that went underneath. And anytime you turn your head, you'd hit your shoulder pads and stuff like that. So guys started like hacking off the bottom part, but the mask wasn't long enough. So it was like just basically like it wasn't even under your chin. So then we're like, okay, we had these funky kind of plastic pieces in the front. So we're like, let's take these cages off. And then we would jerry rig these other cages
love this era
back on
the
there.
league.
And like most of the time they were like, taped, or like we added new screw holes and, put screws in. So by the end of the year, most of our team, there was a few games, maybe AJ Shannon was the only one that was used to playing field lacrosse, and he still wore it. Everybody else had kind of gassed the mask. A few teams, I think it was like Washington, they mandated that you couldn't change the helmet. I was in Buffalo at the time, and we tore it up. We didn't care what the league said. We were like, no, we were the bad news bandits. We could do what we wanted. So that's what we did. But yeah, they were awful.
Megan does what he wants.
Did what we wanted, man.
That's great. Well, I got nothing else. That's we're gonna have to get you on again. We got lots more to talk about. You won quite a few more titles.
Yeah,
so
anytime.
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys. Yeah, appreciate it. Taking me down memory lane, calling me old.
Long time coming too. I know you were giving me shit for a while for not getting you on.
Yeah, I was in Rochester. I was like, what do I got to do? Do I have to sit at the back of a plane for you to get me on this show, or what?
Well, you can't be getting an RV in your contract if you want to be jumping on here.
Or we got to do it in the RV still. We got to call up your sister.
Yeah, he would charge us double for that RV though if we wanted to record in the back of it.
Yeah, I'll have to hit up his sister.
Hey, were you there, Lomer, when the guys drove across the country? Were you there?
What do you mean drove across the country? Like
I'll have to save it for
no, I
next
don't
time.
think I was.
No,
the first year I was there was when 2 Chainz was playing that concert and we had to take the private plane and it was Vino almost didn't go.
Vino was having a snap show on me. Yeah.
Oh, he's like, I'm not going. I'm not fucking going.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not getting on that plane.
I'm not going. I'm gonna die. Don't you understand? I'm gonna die on this plane. It's not worth dying. And I was like, Vino, just relax. It's fine. Like, they're private jets. There's nothing wrong with it. All the gear stacked up in the middle of the aisles. Yeah.
I was trying so hard to volunteer my gear to not bring it, and then I was just going to try to go home. But
and the funniest thing was, as soon as we got to the rink, we got a 2-minute penalty for delayed game.
Yep.
Remember that?
Yeah. It was
wild.
Ridiculous.
NLL, man. Planes, trains, and automobiles. I got some of the funniest travel stories, but I'll save that for the next time I get it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get you back on to talk coaching and travel and everything.
Yeah. All good, man. Love it.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it, man.
Appreciate
awesome.
it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Great one with the Kurz dogs. I mean, RV is just
incredible stuff. Absolutely incredible stuff. And the fact, like, just throwing in LASIK eye surgery too, like, and he never ended up
Yeah.
getting it, but that's such a like, how do you even land on that idea? It's so good.
It's a classic NLL story for so many reasons because he gets all that absurd stuff thrown in. Then there's a holdout. Then he plays 9 games for Edmonton. Keeps his RV because of because it was a side contract, and then Buffalo just says no, we're not honoring your contract.
Like, unbelievable, man.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, sick. We're gonna win the championship anyway, so like whatever.
Yeah, screw it. But no, yeah, that was a really fun conversation.
A big player empowerment guy, by the way.
yeah,
Using
big
your
time.
using your leverage, a guy about using the leverage that is given to you within the CBA. And
Yep. Power
I
to
didn't
the
realize
players,
like how
baby.
long ago our CBA, like he was talking about PLPA way back in the late 90s. Like I guess we got
I think it was 93.
so they got the labor stuff figured out pretty early.
Yeah.
Not figured out. There's been many improvements since then, but at least they
but
had a
at
union.
least started.
Yeah. Interesting. We should
There's
maybe
there's another league that could take note. I'm just saying. I'm saying, but I'm not saying.
I'm saying nothing. Dan is saying.
Yeah. Donnie's gonna sit that one out. Anything else before we wrap it up for this week?
NCAA tournament this weekend. I've been doing reviews all week for lacrosse culture. Should be really fun. If you have a chance to watch, well, actually, there's a shit ton of Canadians. So if you're, I think a lot of our audience is kind of attuned to that. But a bunch on Syracuse, Peyton Cormier at Virginia, Dyson on Duke. There's a bunch at St. Joe's, a bunch of really talented kids, a bunch on Denver. So a lot of Canadians going off. And if you have a chance to watch this Notre Dame team play, they're fucking nasty, dude.
Are they?
They're really good. They lost one game to Georgetown, and I think if not, that was an overtime. If they didn't lose that, they'd be undefeated still and have a pretty decent look at it here as we go down the playoffs. They beat the wheels off Virginia and then Duke in the ACC tournament. They smoked both of them, so pretty impressive.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll have to be tuning in then.
Yeah. So and then Canadian box right around the corner. I think the OLA starts next week. So
Yep. Exciting times. Get back in those sweaty arenas. That smell of it's just, there's nothing like it.
so I got something on that. So I was out for a walk the other day around my house, and I live close to Maple Grove Arena. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's where the Buzz used to play, Junior B.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I walk in there, and the smell. They say smell is one of your most like nostalgic things. It's one of the things that sticks with you the longest. And it smelled. I haven't been in that barn in 10 years. It smelled exactly the same. It was unbelievable. I was like,
That's
oh my
actually
god.
crazy that it can stay the same.
I was like, I didn't know what Maple Grove Arena smelled like, but when I walked in, I was like, oh my god, I'm in Maple Grove Arena. And then the joy of that nostalgia ripped out of my heart as I look out, and it's inline hockey. Kids are playing roller hockey.
no.
They got the shitty blue flooring in there. You got they're playing slap ass hockey, roller hockey. No one's passing to each other. I'm like, go play lacrosse.
Take the tiles out.
Yeah, like Jordan Mack and Gillies and all those guys who played for the Buzz didn't throw down for just to have this place.
Yeah.
That was the Beehive. That place was the Beehive.
Yeah, and I love that place. Like, the floor is like lower than the stand, so you're like right on top of everything.
Oh yeah.
But I think I played one game there, got knocked out cold, and had a concussion for 6 months. So that
Well,
was.
it might have been because you walk in up on glass level, so the boards are just going up against concrete. So that's why they couldn't play there anymore.
That's probably why it happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much does it.
Yeah. I guess,
I don't know. Is there anything else?
No. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for having patience with us here. We're gonna get back. We're gonna get back on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, go get your Springers pack. $9.95 LCBO. Shotgun the shit out of it. Have some fun.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. That's episode 115 of Back of the Bird.
Peace.